This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome in, folks, to another edition of Open Mic Night. I'm your host, Notes Lukey, and on today's episode, the Lions making their final roster cuts, trimming their roster down to 53. Couple of surprises that I want to discuss as well. We'll kind of go position by position and sort of analyze that from how many guys they cut and who they kept. All of that should be really, really interesting there. Also, some interesting AJ Hinch comments with the Tigers that I think are worth mentioning and could be a strong message for the future of this ball club. And we will get into a little bit of college football towards the end with, of course, Michigan State playing on Friday and Michigan debuting on Saturday for this 2021 season. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend out there. Certainly good to be back. I mean, school has just started over here at John Carroll. In case you guys did not know, I mentioned it a long time ago in the podcast, but I will be back for another 2 years here at John Carroll as the graduate assistant in the sports information department, a department that I really, really love and really enjoy. And I love being around our student workers, and it means a lot to not only me and us, but it means a lot to the entire school community here. So, and you know, it's working in sports information has afforded me a lot of opportunities. Like meeting Brandon Staley. I talked about that a couple weeks ago, how I met him over the summer and had a chance to talk to him, the new LA Chargers head coach, among so many other, amazing people I've met. So really, really excited to officially be starting on that route as well. Before we begin, though, I do want to quickly mention something. And this doesn't really have anything to do with Michigan or anything like that. It has to do with high school sports. And it's been circulating in the news the last couple days. This school down, the supposed school down in Columbus, Ohio, Bishop Sycamore, they call it. And apparently they got busted pretty hard over this past weekend. They were, on TV against on ESPN against IMG Academy, the big powerhouse from Florida, the state of Florida. High school football on ESPN, all that. And ESPN was completely duped, apparently, by this Bishop Sycamore, because Bishop Sycamore claimed that they had all these Division I talent and all that. But it was just kind of weird because they didn't really give much information as to who their players were, what numbers they were wearing, and it was just a very shady operation. And and then it turns out that their head coach has an arrest for a warrant for his arrest for tax fraud or something like that. A lot of the players aren't even eligible to play high school football because they're 2 years out of high school, and what a mess that was. But I will say, so I do remember hearing about Bishop Sycamore last year, and my boss over here at John Carroll, he actually used to work at St. Ignatius. He used to be kind of like their sports information guy at St. Ignatius, which is one of the powerhouse football programs in the state of Ohio, just on the west side of Cleveland. And, a legitimate team. I mean, they've won, I believe, 11 state championships in their history, the most of any high school in Ohio history. And this team played this Bishop Sycamore last year. And I remember texting with my boss, who was at St. Ignatius back then. We were texting last year, 2020, and we were talking about, St. Ignatius' football season and all that. And I remember texting him vividly. I remember saying, who do they have this week? And he said, we have this Bishop Sycamore from some school in Columbus. They don't compete in the OHSAA, which is, like the MHSAA in Michigan. They don't compete in the OHSAA, but they're like this new school, and they're trying to find opponents because they're a new school, people that would play them. I'm like, okay, I totally get that, especially with new programs at the high school level, because they struggle to find opponents, and then big teams like St. Ignatius, St. Ed's, all those big teams in Ohio, teams don't want to play them, so they just find whatever's available. So I totally understood. Bishop Sycamore, they didn't play in the OHSAA. I get it, but it was kind of interesting. I didn't really know that they had played a lot of these big schools in Ohio last year. They played St. Edward, which is one of the best programs in the country for a long time. It was. Then they played Massillon down in near Canton. The high school of Chris Spielman with the Lions. They played another team too. one of the powerhouses in Ohio. The name escapes me, but Warren Harding down in Youngstown. That was where Maurice Claret went. So these are legit teams that they're playing. They're not playing just the random schools out in the middle of nowhere. These are legit schools that they ended up landing contracts with, and it was just crazy. I didn't know that, and then they kind of resurfaced, and I had a lot of people text me about it over the weekend, and I thought, is that the Bishop Sycamore that I thought of, that I knew of back when my boss and I were texting last year? And sure enough, it was. I just could not believe that this has been the program that that team is running the last year or so. Because last year was a new school. They claim they're like an online charter school. I don't know the validity of that or anything, but their football program was definitely very odd. And my boss last year, he was telling me that this team was. He knew last year they were pretty phony because they didn't even give him they didn't even give him a roster before the game. There's people in the stands. St. Ignatius, a powerhouse program in the state of Ohio. Nobody even knows what their opponent is. No roster numbers. And at St. Ignatius, they have students that do the broadcasting for their games and all that. And they didn't even know. They didn't even know anyone on their roster because they didn't even give a roster. They were very discreet about a lot of things. Nobody knew their coach. It was so hard to get in touch with them, he said. Just very odd. He knew right from the get-go something was up, even last year before it made national headlines. So just an interesting story I found over the weekend, and a little bit of a personal connection I had with that. But I do remember last year vividly when St. Ignatius played Bishop Sycamore, but like I said, I didn't think much of it because I thought they were just another school. There's schools like that aren't affiliated with the OHSAA. They play out of state and and all that. Some of the Christian schools as well. They have their own Christian league and all that. But this is a very, very interesting story, and one that will be remembered in the high school ranks for a long, long time. That's for sure. All right, just wanted to get that out of the way. Let's get down to business now. The Lions making some cuts to trim down their 53-man roster. I got to say, a lot, and I mean a lot of surprises. More surprises this season than in definitely the last 4 or 5 years for sure. First of all, and I'll get to more of the position-by-position breakdowns later, but I was surprised that the Lions cut Tyrell Crosby. That's one of them on the line. I thought he was a solid backup lineman. Kind of versatile. He could play kind of wherever, mostly, at that right tackle position. But, I mean, was he a starter material? No. But was he a solid backup? Could he do the job, if something happened? Yes. Yeah, I mean, I would say so. I'd say he was a quality backup lineman. Not really starter material. But I was a little surprised they cut him. Was I surprised that the Lions cut Jelani Tavai? No. I talked about it last podcast. I thought his days were numbered with the Lions. When you come in as a second-round pick and you were graded out as a fourth or fifth-round pick, that's not very good. There's a lot expected of you, and Jelani Tavai really disappointed in his time in Detroit, in my opinion. Just could not cover anyone, could not tackle. We saw it in the preseason. He kept getting burned on those little routes out in the flats. I mean, he missed tackles. I mean, he looked lost out there a lot of times. Also, how about this? The Lions cutting both kickers. Even Zane Gonzalez and Randy Bullock. They don't even have a kicker on their 53-man roster. The Lions have to go sign a kicker in the next couple days for their game in a couple weeks. I mean, unbelievable. I don't think I've ever heard of anything like that before. I mean, don't get me wrong, it might have happened before, but at least in my memory, I've never heard of a team cutting both kickers before camp. They must not have been satisfied with Bullock or Gonzalez. I was shocked. I thought Randy Bullock was their guy. I thought he was going to be the Lions kicker. I guess not. See, the Lions never should have gotten rid of Matt Prater. And I understand the whole, he had an off year last year. But this guy is, in my opinion, he's good enough to, refocus himself and have a bounce back year. I think the Cardinals got a steal in Matt Prater as a kicker. I know he's getting older. Like I said, I know that he struggled last year. But I don't know. They need kicking in the NFL. You need stability with that position. And look what's happened. You rewind the last decade. what happened when the Lions don't have a kicker? It completely goes bonkers. I mean, Jason Hanson, those years after Jason Hanson retired, 2013, that was a tough year. I believe David Akers, Nate Freese, these guys were not good for the Lions as a kicker. Then halfway through the 2014 season, then they end up picking up Matt Prater because he got released, by the Broncos. And then the rest was history. So in the little times that the Lions don't have kickers, they struggle. I mean, heck, even look when Sam Martin, remember Sam Martin got hurt in the game against the Cardinals, week 1 of 2017? Punter. And we're talking about punters now, but the Lions punting game struggled. So these kicking positions are positions that you have to solidify. And it just, I don't know, it's really interesting how they cut both kickers. We'll have to see what the method behind their madness is. Also, Rashad Perryman, a little shocked at that. Paid $2 million just to, be in training camp? Man, I thought there would be much more expected out of Rashad Perryman. We'll get to this whole Trinity Benson signing when we preview the wide receivers. But I want to get to quarterbacks. All right, obviously Jared Goff, we know. David Blau and Tim Boyle. I'm surprised they kept all three. Tim Boyle, of course, he's hurt right now. I thought Blau outperformed Boyle in the preseason. I thought maybe they would add Boyle to the practice squad and keep Blau. I mean, who knows? Maybe when they sign a kicker, they'll move Boyle down to the practice squad and cut someone. I don't know. I was a little surprised they kept 3 quarterbacks, especially with Tim Boyle. Running back, I mean, we knew Swift, Jamal Williams, Jamar Jefferson. I think everyone kind of knew that the 7th-round pick from Oregon State would make it. How about Godwin Igwebuike? The running back, I believe he was with the Ravens for a little bit, and he had a good preseason. He did. And I think he was the guy that Goff admitted that everyone just kind of met in the huddle during the first game of the preseason against the Bills. And obviously Jason Kabinda. I mean, is that a star-studded running back group? No. But, we'll have to see, especially with the first two, with Swift and Williams. And, hopefully they develop some depth there with these two guys, the last two that I mentioned. Tight end, again, Patricia, he was big on keeping 3 or 4 tight ends. It looks like this group is just keeping 2, so TJ Hawkinson and Darren Fells. No surprises there at all. Hunter Bryant, one of the other tight ends, a very intriguing prospect for the Lions. I think he was put on injured reserve. This is a guy that's really struggled with injuries, but a guy that did show some flashes a little bit last season. I know he had that big, 47-yard reception during one of the games last year. So a guy, I think he could be a developmental prospect, if you will, but definitely keeping those 2 tight ends right now. All right, wide receiver. Here we go. So when Rashad Perryman was released, I had a feeling that these were the 6 receivers that were going to make this team. And I just don't know, man. Tyrell Williams, Khalif Raymond, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Quintez Cephas, Trinity Benson, Tom Kennedy. All right, we know the starters will be, Williams, Raymond, and St. Brown. It has to be at this point. Khalif Raymond has really impressed, Dan Campbell and the staff at camp. Tyrell Williams, I guess, would be the number 1 receiver in this category. And St. Brown, of course, the rookie. Cephas, I'm looking for him to step up this season. Tom Kennedy, of course, the former lacrosse player who, once Rashad Perryman was cut, a guy that, they really just needed to step up, a guy that could probably play in the slot. And then the interesting pick, most interesting, Trinity Benson. So this is a guy that came from basically the practice squad of the Denver Broncos. And the Lions gave up a 5th and a 7th round pick for this guy. An undrafted rookie from some little tiny school in Oklahoma. Trinity Benson. Now, don't get me wrong. Denver's receiving room is loaded. I mean, they have a lot of young, talented receivers in that room. And Trinity Benson might have just been the odd man out. The Lions must see something in this guy to give up a 5th and a 7th round pick for him. So, a lot, in my opinion, a lot should be expected. Now, am I saying go 1,000 yards, 10 touchdowns? No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying this guy, we better see this guy on the field. If you gave up 2 draft picks for him, he better be out there. So, obviously, very raw. Probably, in my opinion, probably the odd man out in Denver. He could. Obviously, the Lions must see something in him. They must see some talent. Because last year, the last couple of years, the main group for this team has been the receiver position. Now, it's almost one of the weakest points. I mean, Tyrell Williams had 1,000 yards 5 years ago. I mean, this is he hasn't had a 1,000-yard season since. I think this group has a combined only 4,000 something receiving yards ever, or in the NFL. Because Tom Kennedy, St. Brown, Trinity Benson have zero receiving yards in the NFL. 3 of your 6 receivers. Yikes. Oh, man, we'll see how that goes. Offensive line, no surprises for the starters. The depth, I mean, Matt Nelson, Evan Brown, Logan Stenberg. Logan Stenberg, he's a guy that is kind of a project. The old 4th-round pick, I believe, from Kentucky last year. I think Dan Campbell called him he's just a little baby. He's just a little tiger out there, like a little tiger cub. Not a baby as in, he's soft or whatever. Just, he's got a lot to learn. So we'll see if they develop any of those guys for some depth on the O-line. Moving on to the D-line. Michael Brockers, Lee McNeil, Nick Williams, no surprises. Penasini, I'm glad, Kevin Strong, I thought he made a strong, no pun intended, showing in the preseason to belong on this team. Guy that could really rotate at D-line. It's obvious that with these cuts and all that, they really favored the defense. They really are trying to bolster the defense up for sure. Trey Flowers, Romeo Okwara, Julian Okwara, Austin Bryant, Charles Harris. No surprises on the edge. Jamie Collins, Alex Anzalone, Derrick Barnes, Jalen Reeves-Maybin, Anthony Pittman at linebacker. Jalen Reeves-Maybin was another guy that was on the hot seat, but I think, it was Jelani Tavai and Reeves-Maybin. Maybe were the guys that were going to be let go, but Jalen Reeves-Maybin, really, he's on this team for his special teams. I don't think he's really on this team for, his linebacker skills. So a guy that really could, hopefully, obviously make an impact on special teams. Not really expecting much from him during the games, on defense. Derrick Barnes and Anthony Pittman, they have well earned their stripes for this team. I think Derrick Barnes could really, really step up, especially as a special teams guy, and hopefully one day work his way into the rotation at linebacker. Corners, they a little bit of surprise them. They cut Corn Elder, a guy that was supposed to be their nickel. But, a couple guys like, AJ Parker was kind of signed just recently, Jerry Jacobs, Bobby Price, and Mike Ford. That was another guy I was a little bit surprised that they cut. Another backup corner that, kind of held his own. I mean, obviously he struggled a little bit, but, you could see some flashes of him holding his own when called upon. But, no more Mike Ford. And safeties, Dean Marlowe, C.J. Moore, Tracy Walker, Will Harrison Walker, the starters. Not surprised. That was another position group that Dan Campbell had pointed out that was a big, a big group to watch, the safeties and the linebackers. So no surprises there for starters. I don't think Will Harris is very good. Tracy Walker, I think, is definitely better than Will Harris, but we'll have to see. So, Jack Fox, the punter, Scott Daly, the long snapper. Of course, he's taken over for Don Muehlbach, a very weird cut on his birthday, especially. So the Scott Daly era begins for long snappers with the Lions, and of course, no kicker. So that it'll be interesting to see. Of course, in a couple weeks on Sunday the 13th, I believe. Actually, the 12th. 13th is a Monday, so the 12th of September is when the Lions take on the San Francisco 49ers. And we'll break that down for you a little bit more throughout the next couple weeks. But very exciting. I'm excited for this Lions season. I don't care about the talk out there that this is a 3-win team or whatever. Just it's exciting just to have football back. And I want to see if these guys can really continue to mature and develop, because this is really about the future. This isn't about the now. This is about, the teams in the next coming years for the Lions. But if they can show some improvement throughout the season, I think, at least for right now, I think that would be a big plus. All right, so I want to move on a little bit from Lions talk. I do want to get into a little bit of Tiger talk before we close out with some Michigan State and Michigan football, because we didn't really talk about college football much this summer. So, an interesting quote from AJ Hinch this summer. He's talking about the free agent market and guys coming to the team next year, and kind of like old times. The free agency, it makes me think of the old times when Mr. Ilitch would just spend all this money on these free agents. I mean, giving a big contract to Prince Fielder and giving these big Jordan Zimmerman, re-signing Miguel Cabrera and Justin Verlander to these massive, massive deals. But when asked about the free agent market and all that, AJ Hinch said this, and this is courtesy of Evan Petzold from the Detroit Free Press. We're going to reestablish ourselves as a winning franchise and develop a winning culture. If you want to be a part of it, then you'll come. If you don't, then we'll beat you. I love this quote. I do. Have the Tigers struggled this season? Of course. They've had their struggles. Is this a better team than in recent years for the Tigers? Yes. You can tell the Tigers are more athletic. They're a little more scrappy. These games are a little bit closer. They're gonna get over 100, over 70 wins. I mean, they're close. They're in this I think almost the mid 60s right now. But we have not seen a baseball team like this in Detroit probably since 2016. So obviously there's some promise, and when you add all the prospects and all that on top of it. But when AJ Hinch says, if you want to be a part of this team that we're rebuilding, that we're reestablishing, then with open arms, we will welcome you. But if you don't want to be a part of us, we'll just go beat you. I love this swagger from AJ Hinch. If you don't want to be a part of us, go play somewhere else, but we're going to beat you. This is the swagger, in my opinion, that Detroit needs right now. Detroit has been down on its luck for so long, the last 5 or 6 years or so. And getting some energy, getting these guys, getting free agents to come. I hope this statement here makes it so that free agents want to come play for AJ Hinch. It's going to be a very interesting offseason for the Tigers because a lot of people, have openly said, including Al Avila, they want to start spending again. They want to start spending. And this is the plan. This is the plan coming to fruition. You get all these you get all these high draft picks. You start building in the system. When you start showing some promise, then you start signing those free agents. That's why I'm not willing to give up on Al Avila just yet. Am I a fan of him being as a general manager? No, and I'm not entirely. But I want to see how these free agents pan out. I want to see how these draft picks pan out first before we judge Al Avila further. If they go out and sign some star talent, like a guy like Carlos Correa, because shortstop's a big hole that the Tigers need filled. And obviously Carlos Correa has played with AJ Hinch before in Houston. A star like that would be a real Kickstarter to the future of this ball club. And a statement like this, if you don't come, we'll beat you. It's just confidence. It's swagger. I love it. Confidence that the Tigers can build a winning ball club. Confidence they can go back to the playoffs, start winning AL Central titles again. I love it. And I think this is a big statement. I think that Tiger fans should really, really be in love with this and buy in, especially if they can get some quality free agents this summer. So it'll be really, really interesting to see. And I'm really, really, really looking forward to seeing how this goes for the Tigers. All right, so I do want to end with a little bit of college football. We don't talk about it a ton on the podcast. Honestly, it's not really my specialty. I mean, we have the Michigan podcast and all that. If you want a little bit more details, Steve Dace and his friend, the voice of college football, Mark Rogers, they do a great job with college football. So I'll let them take it away on a little bit more details there. But I do want to highlight a little bit Michigan State and Michigan. Michigan State playing at Northwestern on Friday at 9 p.m. on ESPN, and Saturday Michigan playing host to Western Michigan, a little Michigan MAC rivalry right there, at noon on ESPN. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not expecting much from these teams this year. In the past, it's, obviously we had the Mark D'Antonio years where Michigan State was, on almost on top of the college football world, on top of the Big Ten, with upsetting Ohio State, making it to the college football playoff. I mean, and then Michigan. What have they really done with Harbaugh? Not much. I mean, they can't even beat Michigan State. Even in Michigan State's down years, they can't even beat them. But personally, I think MSU has a little bit brighter of a future than Michigan does. And that's because Mel Tucker, last year he didn't even really get a full season. But now he's going to get a full season, to get his staff, get all his guys in there. I mean, we've already seen a huge uptick in transfers to Michigan State. So he's obviously getting his guys to come. And I think he's just trying to establish this team, in his identity, the team that he wants to establish. And getting the guys that transfer in, I mean, seeing all these guys transfer in, I think there's something brewing in East Lansing with Mel Tucker trying to sell these guys on building this winning program. He's, and he's a very, very smart guy, and he really knows what he's doing, at least from what I've seen. And, did Michigan State struggle last year? Yes. I don't think that was all completely his fault. He was hired late. He didn't get a full season. Last year, we shouldn't judge what he did last year. I think this year should be the number one year to judge based on the results and how they're progressing. And then if you look at Michigan, obviously in all the years with Harbaugh, they've pretty much had a pretty good defense. And then there's guys, whether it's Kwity Paye who's come through, Rashawn Gary. I mean, now it's mostly Donovan Jeter, and then there's Aiden, or I'm sorry, the kid from Divine Child, Aiden Hutchinson. So they obviously have some players. Khaleke Hudson in the past. I mean, they've had players, that have done a great job for their defense. The question is always their offense, because the offense under Harbaugh has always struggled. They talk about him, the quarterback whisperer. What's the quarterbacks that he's bringing in? And the quarterback this time around for the University of Michigan is Cade Mcnamara, one of the best quarterbacks in Nevada high school history, a guy that showed a little bit of flash last year in some games, especially against Rutgers. Not much showing off against Rutgers, but I just really don't know. That's the thing with Michigan, is you just don't know about these quarterbacks. I just don't trust Jim Harbaugh to develop quarterbacks anymore. I mean, what has he done? Jake Rudock. What did he win? The Citrus Bowl? Okay, that was one bowl game. Okay, Wilton Spate. What did he win? John O'Corn transfers in from Houston. Nothing. Oh, Shea Patterson, the number one overall quarterback in the class of 2016. What did Shea Patterson win? Nothing. I mean, it's just like a quarterback carousel. One guy in after the other. Joe Milton, another guy, transfer. I don't know when Harbaugh's going to get it right, and I don't know if Cade McNamara is this guy or not. But it's about time that Jim Harbaugh gets a quarterback at Michigan that can help him, because that's the position that they're struggling with as quarterback. They need to find a leader, a guy that can really, help this team win some games. A guy that can really be dynamic. In college football, Kirk Herbstreit talked about it in an interview with Brad Galley last week. Go check that out if you haven't. He talked about, basically the state of Michigan and Michigan State and their football programs. And he talked with Brad Galley about, with Michigan, in college football today, you can't win the old way. You can't win by just running the football and with all this solid defense. You have to be able to stretch the field out. And you look at the top, 4 teams every year that make the college football playoff. They all have dynamic offenses. Look at Alabama, dynamic offense. Clemson, dynamic offense. Oklahoma, one of the most dynamic offenses in the country. You got to have a dynamic offense. You can't win the old way anymore. That might work in the NFL to win, with the run game and defense and all that, but in college football it's a lot different. And they just have never really figured that out with this spread offense. And I know they brought Josh Gaddis in last year to mix up the offense and all that and make it a little bit more modern, but it just takes time. And if Michigan can get on that level where they can start, recruiting these guys that have speed, that can get open, that, for a spread-like offense, instead of this old school, fullback dive up the middle offense on, third down, then I think Michigan can start seeing some promise, because I think the defense is there overall. I mean, there are a couple missing, the DBs have always struggled, but I think the defense, there's definitely pieces there. But on offense, just they gotta find a quarterback. And I don't know if Cade Mcnamara is this guy or not, but it hasn't worked in 7 years. So am I expecting a ton? Not really. But we shall see. I mean, anything can happen in college football every year, but I just really don't trust Jim Harbaugh anymore. Of course, he's working on his half salary now. He took a huge pay cut. I don't know. It's just a messy situation. Our football in the state of Michigan right now is not very good at the college and pro level. I mean, look at the Lions. It's kind of a messy situation right now. And then obviously the big ones, Michigan and Michigan State. I can't speak for the MAC schools. But for Michigan State, at least Michigan State has a little bit of promise. But I don't know, Michigan is not really impressed right now by anything. We'll talk a little bit more about college football next week on the podcast, especially with the Lions, not having any games or anything till the 12th. But thanks again for tuning in, folks. Make sure to check out all the great content on the podcast network. We have the Michigan podcast that I mentioned earlier. They're very, very good with the college football talk. And, John Macaroon and his podcast that he does with his cousin Adam, the Doc and Jock Wrestling Podcast, and the Wrestling Podcast as well. And all the other amazing content, the Fan Report, they do a great job as well. And also John Macaroon doing an excellent job with his SI coverage. I've been reading some of his stories. He's doing a great job. Credentialed media at Lions practices and games for sure. But thanks again, folks, for tuning in, and make sure to tune in next time only on Open Mic Night.